Dr. Amanda Fisher, a pelvic floor physical therapist and owner of Empower Your Pelvis. I love functional movement. I love watching people move, and I love helping people stay doing what they love to do. That's what I'm here to do. Help you continue to stay in the gym and hopefully decrease your bladder leakage, pelvic pain, back pain, abdominal discomfort. The list goes on and on. Pelvic pressure. And there's a lot that we can do with the pelvic floor muscles down here. All of this lovely red stuff are pelvic floor muscles. They connect from the front of the pubic bone front of the pelvis, back around to the tailbone and sacral area, and definitely out to the hips as well, our sits bones. Now, as you can see, this is kind of like, a trick-or-treat basket. I could put some candy in here and these things would look like they could hold things in place. That's kind of how your muscles work. They help to support things like our bowel and our bladder. They all stack in here. Bladder, uterus is in the center, rectum in the back, and then the prostate is just around the front as well with no uterus with a male client. They support our goodies. They keep our goodies in. That's how these muscles work. They also are sphincteric. So we've got a urethra sphincter. The vaginal area should close like a sphincter, and so does the rectum. The urethra and the rectum keep things in, but then they let things exit as they need to. Vaginal area, we let things in and then we let a baby out when we need to, okay? So we want those muscles to be able to do their jobs. They are sump pump-like, meaning just like a sump pump in our house pumps fluid through and then pumps the toxins out. It does that in our body. The diaphragm, our breathing muscle, works with our pelvic floor to help move things up and down, filter it through our body and back out. That's our lymphatic system. It is sexual in function. We have one layer of muscles here. I'm sorry, they're not in the video. They are at home because my kids like to play with my pelvises and they're boys. So the front of the pelvis has 3 muscles that work in correlation with the sexual aid and function. So they loop up around the clitoral area, around the vaginal area, and then cross over sits bone to sits bone, and the looping also goes back around the rectum. So in true fashion, all of these muscles need to be able to contract and relax. They need to have full range of motion. Just like our arms, if I walked into gym and I could not move my arms up or down past this point, I'm not gonna be as good at the gym as if I had full range of motion, right? If I only have limited range of motion, I'm probably gonna compensate. If I'm compensating, I'm probably overusing other muscles, creating dysfunction, pain, and whatnot. And that's exactly what happens with these muscles down in the pelvic region, okay? So I mentioned they're supportive, they're sexual in function, they're sphincteric. They need to be doing their job. So all the things that I just mentioned, if they're doing the opposite, that's dysfunctional, okay? So if they're not being sphincteric, meaning you're peeing your pants when you shouldn't be, when we're not ready, telling our body that we need to go, that's a problem. If they're not holding our goodies in, if our bladder's starting to fall out like a prolapse, that's a problem. If we're passing gas in the gym when we don't want to because we're trying to hold it back and we just can't, that's a problem. Now, first thing that I find as a pelvic floor PT, more often than not, people are having bladder leakage or fecal leakage, loss of gas even, not because they're weak, because that's what we would think, right? If these muscles aren't working properly, they're weak. I should do 1,000 Kegels a day. Contrary to that, you shouldn't be doing 1,000 Kegels a day. We need to work on mobility. So again, most often people are more tight than they are true weak. So I like to have people work on pelvic floor mobility. Can you pretend vaginally, if you had a straw there, could you suck up a smoothie through a straw in the vaginal area? Can you focus just on the vagina? Don't squeeze your butt. Don't squeeze your lower belly. Just get that vagina. Can you put it all the way back down? If you're like, I don't know if I felt anything in this position, try seated. Because I'm standing right now, seated's gonna be a little easier. Can you pick up the blueberry, suck up a smoothie vaginally? Can you put it back down? If you're a male, I would say, can you hold back a fart? That's gonna hit the rectal side. Can you release it back down, okay? On that release, it's always an elevator coming back down to the lobby. Can I pick up a blueberry vaginally? Can I suck up a smoothie? Can I release it back down? The release should take double the time that it does to pick up. And it's always harder to release it out than it is to pick it up, okay? So you might feel it flutter, you might feel it plop, you might feel like you just don't have control. Totally normal. We want to work on that, okay? It's very common to have these symptoms. It's normal to hear it. It's not a normal way that these muscles should be working, okay? So we want to work on that easy, controlled mobility. If it feels off, if it feels very spastic, like you just can't connect down there, the more you make it think with your brain and this area, the more it connects, the better. You'll start to feel that control. I usually tell my patients it's usually about 3 to 5 reps before you start to feel that control. And I want that for you. So make sure you take the time to assess that out. Now, if you're sitting doing this activity, also try leaning forward. If you're leaning onto your knees, can you pick up that blueberry? Can you put it all the way back down? This will feel different for some people because we're changing the angle of the tissue. As I lean forward with my elbows on my knees, my bladder gets to sit on my pubic bone and my muscles get to work without the weight of a bladder. In this position, I also like to have patients try, can you lean forward, hands or elbows on your knees? As you suck up a smoothie, pick up a blueberry, with your mouth, you're going to smooch or pucker like I'm calling my dog over, okay? If this is really light here, can't really hear it, right? That's right. This isn't gonna hear it either. It's not gonna activate. We want it to activate. So be loud as you suck up that smoothie, as you pick up that blueberry, and you should feel a little bit more activation there in that sphincter. That's what we want, okay? We want that closure and lift so that you can wake up the tissue down there so it's ready to go with any jumps or movement that you're going to be doing, okay? 3 to 5 times to activate the pelvic floor. Now, I will typically do that before a leg day, before a burst training, athletic conditioning day. I want to wake up that tissue so it's ready to go. But then when I march my little butt into the gym, I want to also check out my mobility. I need to make sure that my pelvic floor is lengthening out so that when I get moving, it's starting from a full range of motion. So I love myself doing a deep squat. So here is one option. Deep squat. I will grab something in the gym, hold on to it, or just squat down myself. Deep squat's fabulous. A hip 90-90 is another one, and I just realized I probably don't have a good view on this, but it would be if I'm on the floor, one leg in front, one leg behind, okay? So it's kind of like a herky cheerleading position, but I'm sitting on the ground. And doing that on both sides to check out my range of motion in my hips. Our hips play a huge part in what's happening in that pelvic floor. So make sure you're getting that mobility. Child's pose, another great option, or happy baby, where you're laying on your back, pulling those knees up, okay? Laying on your back, pulling the knees up, breathing, let that pelvic floor go. Now, after mobility, I wanna make sure that my pelvic floor is firing, it's ready to go. Best way to do that is to check out your posture. Are my ribs stacked over my pelvis? Or do I find myself standing like this in class, like, we're doing that exercise again, tucking that butt forward, leaning back. I call this the mom posture. We tend to stretch out the front abdominal tissue. We hinge at our back, so we're lengthening out these muscles. There ain't no way our urethra is gonna be firing up, or our core, when we're in this position. And we see it oh so often in the gym, and I see it with my patients as well. So you've gotta be able to bring that posture up, ribs stacked over the pelvis. You can think, if you find yourself leaning back like that, like, how do I bring my ribs and my pelvis closer together? Like if this is 10 inches apart, can I make it 8? Okay. One way that I have patients do this in the clinic is standing up. They're going to go into a ski posture. So they're up on their toes. Their heels are up off the ground. They're leaning forward as if they're getting ready to go ski downhill. This naturally makes your core, naturally gives your ribs to stack over the top of your pelvis. So then you're going to bring that back into standing, that same feeling. Okay, here it is. Where I maybe wanted to be was here. Oh, go into that posture. Notice how it feels different. And then coming back forward. Can I feel that posture change? And then try to maintain that in standing. After a couple of days of trying this or doing this before the class or camp starts is huge. That stacked over the pelvic floor when you're breathing properly during your activities it should allow your pelvic floor to move up and down, okay? That means it's gonna fire for you when we need it to. You don't have to be doing any squeezing because your diaphragm is already connecting with that pelvic floor through movement, okay? Now, one way to think about this is jumping. So often if you're stuck in this stance and you go to jump, after a while, you're gonna start to feel bladder urgency. Again, in this tilted back, hinged back, lengthened abdominal tissue, lengthened around the urethra, I don't really have support. I actually don't have support. I'm lengthened out. Once I can stack my posture, for some patients it feels like they're still falling forward. You're not, you're standing up tall, ribs stacked over the pelvis. When you start to jump this way, your body naturally gets that pelvic floor to spring up and down. That's what we want, okay? If you're still peeing doing this, then we want to slow it down. Blow out. As I'm coming down, I'm descending from that jump. So we're taking the breath out of the body. As the breath comes out, the pelvic floor goes up. That sphincter starts to contract, okay? Pause. Pause. Figure out what your rest time is, your rest phase, before you start feeling that urgency. Can I go a little faster? Same thing goes if I'm jumping rope. It's the same speed. Double unders, same try, okay? Hurdle hops, same thing. Check your posture, check your rest period. Where's your exhale? With back pain, what plays into this is a lot of times when I'm seeing people do like leg day, they'll complain of back pain. And what I'm noticing with patients is they're losing endurance in their posture and their core. So one thing I have them focus on leg day is when you're doing squats or lunges, single leg squats, first thing, when you're doing that, if you notice that your big toe is starting to come up, that can tell us we're losing our core strength. So you've got to focus in on your core a little bit. When we tighten up our core, it's a minimal contraction. It's not a big bicep curl contraction that you're like, ugh, forcing all your muscles to try to get that weight up. It's a very gentle, tiny contraction. I say about 10 cents. Instead of giving me $1 like you would with a bicep curl, you're gonna give me 10 cents. Can you give me 10 cents of a contraction? You can feel inside your pelvis, if I tighten up hip bone to hip bone, can I feel a little muscle just kind of poke into my fingers? Finding that hip bone, coming in, digging into my tissue. Can I try to tighten my muscles, hip bone to hip bone, where my fingers are, and feel a little pucker? Can I pucker into your fingers? Can I think tightening ribs to pelvis and feel a little contraction come into my fingers here? Can I think I'm gonna have a zipper connected from my pubic bone to my breastbone? Can I tighten that up and feel a little contraction down there? So a couple different types of cueing. Keep it a gentle hug there when you're doing your exercises. So like RDLs, hips back, or what I'm seeing with patients is they start to fatigue and start to round the back. So we're gonna think about posture. We want those ribs stacked over the back. When I'm here, we're breathing into your pelvic floor. We're gonna open it up. I'm gonna blow out, give it a little zip, a little ribs to pelvis, a little hip hug. As I go to stand, I'm gonna inhale. I might have a little bit of a tiny little hug around the core. Blow out. Little zip as I blow out. Blowing out here, my pelvic floor is going to tighten as I come up. Here we want it to lengthen out. Okay, so we're going to inhale, blow out to stand. Because as we inhale into our pelvic floor, that breath comes in, it's going to drop the pelvic floor. The belly fills with air, pelvic floor lengthens. As you blow out, the air is coming out, pelvic floor is going to come back up. It's going to stabilize, it's going to support. That's what we want to happen with our exhales. So the blow as you go, exhale on movement, always. When in doubt, blow it out. That's what we want with our activities that we're doing at the gym. If we're having low back pain with core, I'm gonna show you. All right, so back pain with core movement. If you're feeling low back pain while you're doing core exercises, y'all check out your posture. Okay, make that always be your number one thing to tune into, because most often when we're getting low back pain, especially like, let's say my feet are off the ground, I'm sitting in boat pose, Am I rounding my back, tucking my pelvis, and creating back pain? Because that's not going to be great on the core. It's doing the same thing that we talked about in the posture. It's tucking under, clenching pelvic floor, tightening up the back, shutting off the core. So it's not going to be working well. You're going to create that low back pain. Or it might be that you're trying to do like flutter kicks, where I've got long legs extended doing flutter kicks, but my back starts to creep up off the floor and it's lengthening out my belly. Okay, so I'm creating a tunnel underneath my back while I'm doing flutter kicks. Well, now if you look at this right here, it's no longer stacked in a posture like it is here, where here everything's talking and communicating. So go back to that posture picture that we had on the presentation. If my pelvis is coming up in a way, that's going to create low back pain because I don't have the core support. So maybe flutter kicks, if I'm having back pain with this, maybe that's too long of a lever arm. So we'll bring it up and we'll go higher. Can I keep things stacked here, connect with my core, ribs to pelvis, hip bone to hip bone, or a zip up where I'm not feeling it in my back? If you do feel it in your back, do some back stretches, rocking knees side to side, pelvic tilts, single knee to chest, okay? Get into that tissue, but really focus on when you're doing core exercises. If the posture's changing, then you need to modify that exercise and think about how can I get these ribs stacked with the pelvis to create less back pain and get this core to fire on, okay? Remember that core is a minimal contraction. It's that 10 cents. If instead of giving me $1, you want to give me 10 cents to connect that core, because they're endurance muscles. We want them to last longer all throughout the day instead of just for certain exercises, all right? If you want more information on this, please hit me up because I'm more than happy to help. Okay, so when it comes to pregnancy, postpartum, post-hysterectomy, post-tummy tuck / mommy makeover, a lot of that, guys, is still going back to posture. But the postpartum, the tummy tuck, and the hysterectomy, we've had some major changes to the body that we've got to go back modding down to build up that endurance and strength again. So things that I love, like if we're having back pain, let's say on core day after being postpartum or still dealing with weakness going into the gym, or a hysterectomy or a tummy tuck, or even during pregnancy, we're gonna mod down and maybe do marching here, where I'm exhaling, thinking ribs to pelvis, always blowing out as we're going with any kind of core movement we're doing to get this to fire up. And we're gonna stabilize and build up our core strength here. Or we might throw in some opposite arm, opposite leg movements, okay? There's lots of things we can do here to modify that tissue. But just think core modifications, continuing to fire it up during those movements, like any lifts, sit to stands, walking programs are huge. No matter what, I love a walking program to build up the endurance in the pelvic floor, because when you go back into burn, we're putting a lot of weight through that pelvic floor when we're doing our jumping and running activities. It's like 10 to 12 times your body weight is going through the pelvic floor that has to stable and take on the strength of what's being put on it. And if you're losing bladder or feeling pressure, having fecal smearing, or having the aftermath and feeling that later in the day, then we've probably done too much, where we probably need to mod down more during the camp time. And then in the aftermath, maybe be doing some walking to build up that endurance. So if you have any more questions on this, please let me know. You can shoot me an email at info@empoweryourpelvis.com. Again, I am Dr. Amanda Fisher. I'm so excited that you've sat in with this recap video with me. And thank you for listening to the presentation as to the recap video as well. And I'm more than happy to help anyway, answer any questions, just send them my way. Bye.